Okay, it's time to start. Hello and welcome to this webinar on global beverages and emerging segments. I'm Richard Hall, I'm the chairman of Zenith International, and I'm joined by Matt Wilton, Zenith's Commercial Consulting Director.
Hello everyone.
This webinar will run for up to 30 minutes. I'll start with an update on Zenith's next Global Beverages Congress, and then Matt will present some thinking on emerging segments. We'll finish with hopefully a free and open question and answer discussion, for which you're welcome to submit comments at any time. I believe you've got space on the bar on the right of the screen to submit, and please do so during the presentation or at any time, and then we'll take the questions as they come up. Before I start my presentation, I have to say I'm delighted at the numbers and the spread of you here today. Welcome to a number of friends and clients, as well as many new participants. So on to my presentation on Zenith's next Global Beverages Congress, which we call InnoBev. It'll be our 9th Global Beverage Congress, and it's on the 16th and 17th of April in Warsaw. Generally, we have some 150 delegates each year from top global and regional producers, as well, in fact, as many smaller independents, even startups. Around 40 countries are represented in the room, great for networking and great for getting a world view. This year, the event is kindly sponsored by Aptar, by Bericap, by Closure Systems International, and Sedel, and they'll be talking about some of their latest innovations during the program. The full program and online booking details are available at the zenithinternational.com website. There is a strategy behind our planning for this Congress, and the idea is to give you a direct view over time of many leading markets and production facilities. So we've been in West Europe to the UK, to Germany, to Netherlands and Spain, and in East Europe to Hungary and Russia and Turkey. We've also been to the United States, and our next turn this year is to Poland. The conference has a theme of refreshing outlook. We're organizing it in association with foodbev.com. We've got a fantastic plant tour hosted by Coca-Cola HBC Poland, and we're holding the 2013 InnoBev Sustainability Awards at a gala dinner during the event. I do urge you to consider entering these awards. They can be as prestigious as you make them, and can be great exposure for smaller companies, as well as very useful for the CSR reports of larger companies. In the conference itself, I'm delighted that the keynote address will be given by the chairman of Coca-Cola Europe, who is also the newly elected president of the European Beverages Association, Dominique Reinisch. We have, during the program, also market insight briefings, sessions on enterprise and innovation with some innovators, some comments on East European trends and developments, because that's where we are, a look at global market dynamics, some supplier innovations, some major market opportunities, as well as considering the impact of soft drinks and society. Our speakers include global producers, Coca-Cola, Kirin, Narang Group from India and Tata, as well as Unilever, some regional producers and innovators, as well as other industry representatives and advisors. So we have the president of the International Council of Beverage Associations coming from Australia, as well as other people from around the world, plus industry suppliers. So we think it should be a very worthwhile 2 days and the perfect way to gain a world overview. I'm now going to hand over to Matt Wilton to talk about emerging beverage market segments. Matt.
Many thanks, Richard, and hello everyone. So, as Richard says, I'm going to spend a short amount of time going through some of the key themes in terms of emerging segments in the global marketplace. What we will see today will be a quick trot through a number of key areas. We'll start with a little bit of background on Zenith, just a couple of slides there before moving on to look at the role of the consumer, and then drilling down into individual beverage segments of focus, and then just wrap it all up with a few final thoughts at the end of the presentation. So, very quick look at Zenith. Now, as Richard says, many of you are existing or previous clients and know us well, but there are a number of new faces in the attendee list. So, a little bit about us. Zenith is a niche consultancy, and we specialise and have done for over 20 years now in the food and drinks industries. We are based in, headquartered in the UK, in the city of Bath, where we have 40 staff approximately. But importantly, we also maintain a large and ever-growing network of country-based associates throughout the world, and currently have the ability to cover approximately 70 countries worldwide through on-the-ground Zenith associates. And it should also be noted, all of our staff are specialists in food and drink. What kind of areas of food and drink? Well, essentially, we cover a very large range. We have traditionally and continue to focus and specialise within beverages, and that might be bottled water or soft drinks, but also juices, tea, coffee, functional drinks also. And then within food, whilst we specialise more on dairy, we have an ever-growing client base in other food sectors, and really have the flexibility to cover the whole range. I think lastly, packaging is an important and growing area of focus for us as a consulting firm. Okay, so having just given some of you a little background on Zenith, thought we'd start with a look at global soft drinks consumption. So here we're drawing upon data from Zenith's Global Drinks Service, and looking at, in this particular case, consumption per person over the previous 10 years, really to 2013 or into 2013. A number of key themes just to set some context to the emerging segment presentation. The growth of water. It's a market that we track globally. Early indications for water as it continues to grow is growth in the kind of 6 to 7% volume growth in 2012 in that region. So water continues to be strong. Still drinks, we are seeing an uptick in that area, and that will tie in with some of the emerging themes. But elsewhere, carbonates, juices, dilutables, holding their own, but perhaps slightly more static in the global marketplace. I mean, obviously, this is a summary of, I think, over 60 countries that are tracked within this service. So it would mask individual country trends, but gives a good global context. Okay, so before getting into individual segments, we thought it was worth really examining the role of the consumer in terms of market growth, in terms of emerging strength, and in terms of innovation. And ultimately, I think it's fair to say that increasingly innovation needs to put the consumer first. Now, this is not a new sentiment, but ultimately is growing in importance. We're talking here about the importance of a reason to believe, and also personal relevance to the consumer in what's an increasingly cluttered global marketplace. This isn't a presentation heavy on innovation commentary, and I understand that there will be an innovation presentation during the conference itself, but the proliferation of new products need to resonate with consumers. We've identified 5 key consumer drivers in the global marketplace: health and well-being, age concerns and aging populations, the time-energy conundrum, convenience, and the search for natural. And we've identified those as really key areas to be keeping an eye on into the future. Ultimately, macro consumer trends really are underpinning the areas of beverages that are emerging strongest. And as we go through the presentation, we'll draw inference and reference to the consumer drivers. As a theme, though, what is an emerging segment? One of the things that strikes Zenith working in the industry is that categories continue to blur, and it can become increasingly difficult to really put one's finger on what might be new or emerging. I mean, one such example might be fruit juice with tea infusions, or indeed tea infusions with fruit juice added. The reality is innovation in recent years has been continuing apace and stretching the boundaries of what traditional categories may have been. And ultimately, in that kind of environment, the theme emerging need not necessarily be seen as the next big thing. And we feel this is an important differentiation to make. New categories are perhaps decreasingly an overnight success. I mean, one category often held up would be the energy drinks market, which whilst maybe not coming from nowhere, emerged very quickly and on a very large scale, creating a brand new category of its own. We're seeing that as a decreasing theme within the market. More, what we're seeing is categories that are growing in popularity, yes, but evolving rather than being created from scratch. And really, in terms of the relevant consumer trends and the emerging segments, we're going to concentrate on those which are gaining popularity and examine the reasons why. The first area is health and well-being. Now, our sense is that this is a category driver very much near the top of the consumer agenda, and products that are able to combine functional ingredients and functionality with a natural, healthy, and preferably low-calorie positioning looks set to continue on an upward trajectory. An example in this area might be Nutri-Cosmetics, which is addressing beauty and anti-aging needs, and is of high relevance in particularly some areas of Western Europe where there's a very distinct aging population. And really there's a plethora of functional properties that we could talk about. But some of the key areas might be weight loss and fat blocking, such as the Japanese Pepsi Special product which contains dextrin. Immune support, we feel, is a very key theme, and really kind of leverages the growing consumer focus on preventative medicine and preventative actions. Beauty drinks and weight loss combined, so again, an example of a category or segment evolving and moving from a pure beauty drinks play or a pure weight loss play into a combination factor. Anti-aging, and there's a big theme of protein, partly touched on in this presentation, but explored in much more depth when we meet in Poland. And finally, body skin care, again, another example of functionality within health and well-being. What's going on in energy? So having said energy is a bit of a one-off, it's a segment that one can't ignore. It's huge and ever-growing, and is continuing to dominate the functional drinks category. Certainly at Zenith, it's an area that we are heavily involved and work quite diligently in terms of numbers of projects and reports produced. The last report that we produced on energy drinks gave an overall market growth globally of well into double digits, in excess of 13% volume growth, and notching up towards a 5 billion litre category globally. So, not one that you can ignore, and one where innovation and change continues apace. Key emerging theme is natural energy, particularly where there's a link to plant extracts such as tea, guarana, kola nut, mate, very much growing in importance. Ginseng, another extract, an additive supporting the category, and really caffeine-free energy formulations increasingly being sought out by the consumer. And again, exemplifying the fact that it's a category that's evolving after an initial explosion onto the beverage markets. On the theme of categories blurring plus energy segment, we're seeing much more activity in that area, in areas such as water plus energy, cola plus energy, and juices plus energy. And then the third area for today is the ready-to-drink segment. It's a dynamic category, and it's a category that we see continuing to grow and strengthen in the coming years. This is both within ready-to-drink tea and the ready-to-drink coffee segment. and where we're seeing high levels of innovation and a very wide and ever widening and impressive range of flavors and combinations of flavors, herbs and spices. Flavors and essences of hibiscus blossom, cherry, sweet vanilla, white teas, all a few of many examples that are emerging in this category. Also, in terms of the ready-to-drink positioning, and perhaps the reason why we see it as becoming stronger, is the ability to combine a consumer driver, convenience, and of a ready-to-drink product with functional elements. So, for example, where products have been able to leverage both natural and health, i.e. high natural antioxidants, with a good consumer perception of superiority. So within ready-to-drink tea, seen as something perhaps more desirable than a straightforward CSD or bottled water. And then finally, where an RTD product has been able to include fortified or functional elements, it gives additional impetus and additional growth to an area which is already quite strong. Okay, so I promised a bit of a quick trot through some of the themes. We've covered 3 today. There will be more to follow in Poland. Some specific areas at this point in time will be the role of naturalness, and we will spend time talking about the consumer search for natural within beverages and how that's changing. Soft drinks and an adult target audience, and also protein. We'll spend much time debating and hopefully discussing what's next for protein and soft drinks. So just a few final thoughts. Once again, we're seeing a market with a plethora, with a huge spread of activity and creativity and an ever-baffling array of offerings on the market. Emerging segments will be those best addressing both macro consumer growth drivers, but also those that are able to combine maybe more than one growth trend. Products will increasingly need to deliver against their promised benefits, and obviously here there's a link to the science and to the claims that products can make in terms of ensuring that that happens. As I say, more thoughts and detail will follow in April 2013. Many thanks.
Thanks very much, Matt. Please do send your questions through if you'd like to ask about any specific emerging trends, why they're growing or why they're not growing. We've got a few questions, but happy to take some more. Before we have the questions, we do have a couple of special offers for you attending this webinar, subject to conditions, I should hasten to add. 20% discount on new bookings for the Global Beverages Congress, 16th, 17th April in Warsaw, and 10% discount on some of our latest emerging market reports. There's lots more on Zenith on the Zenith website. You might also like to check my blog at bevblog.net. Yesterday's was rather more philosophical than usual. So how about your questions? I'm very happy to take them as they come. The first one, actually, I think must be one of your earlier slides, Matt, about the overall trends of beverages. Carbonates looked very flat. Is that something that is going to carry on, do you think?
I think that's a great question, Richard. And I think in terms of the emerging segments, it's not featuring highly. That was a global picture which would mask individual country trends. But in terms of some of the key consumer growth drivers, it's perhaps not ticking too many of the boxes, and I think that would contribute to a relatively flat performance.
There's certainly a lot of debate about carbonates and their role in society between taste and refreshment and their calorie content. And I think the tempo does seem to have increased questioning, and I think that Coca-Cola's new advertising engaging in the obesity debate does show that the industry has got to look to solutions. But I think it's fair to say also that I've just been reading some latest figures on the US market, which suggests that light and diet and zero as a share of the overall carbonates market not going above 30%, that there seems to be a natural ceiling for consumers wanting to choose, and I think it's that consumer choice which is the big question.
I think, sorry, just to come back to you on that, Richard, I think that's a great point, and the reintroduction of some of the kind of mid-calorie products within CSDs in the US is probably a good indication that the diet may have reached its ceiling and that there is some middle ground in between the kind of the full fat, full sugar, if you like, and the no cal.
Right. Question on India, about our coverage in India and when do we intend to host a beverage event in this region? Very good question. In fact, I'm going to spend 10 days in India at the end of March, and we're looking to hold one of our congresses there in the spring of next year. India is actually a major strategic focus for me. We've got 2 speakers from India at this Warsaw Congress, from Tata and from Narang. Tata, big global beverage company, Narang moving in the emerging market sector very strongly. Is it possible to get a copy of this presentation? Yes, indeed. We'll send you all a link after this webinar, and you're welcome to come back with any questions. Next one is how we identify the trends. The answer is that we spend an awful lot of time talking to primarily the manufacturers of products, but cross-checking all our analysis with a combination of published sources and the supply chain, the ingredients and packaging and other suppliers. And we find that having all those different perspectives gives us what we try to make a complete picture. Next one about health trend with artificial sweeteners. Do you want to answer this, Matt? Stevia, will artificial sweeteners go down in volume or grow due to weight control issues?
It's an interesting conundrum. On the one hand, particularly due to the European legislation at the end of 2011, the doors have been opened for stevia much more, and certainly there appears to be a growing demand for stevia, and indeed demand for the actual raw product itself, suggesting that will be a large growth area. I mean, surely, in terms of weight control issues, any kind of sweetener offering a low-cal alternative is pretty well placed.
I think sweeteners are one of the most interesting debates because it lies right at the heart of the difference between functional and natural, and the whole issue of calorie, and Matt's point about whether there's a mid-calorie level which will become more acceptable as a combination of taste and calorie combination. It's difficult to tell just yet because it's only really beginning to develop in the last few years. Consumers, a lot of them do seem reluctant to stray away from ordinary sugar. And beyond sugar, there's a debate, but it has to be said that there are some very, very good sweetener innovations, and they're becoming better with shelf life and better with taste all the time. Next one we should ask, still drinks in Southeast Europe. That's a particularly difficult question to answer. What do we think is the future for still drinks in Southeast Europe? That's, I guess, the sort of the Hungary, Greece, Romania area. I mean, all the suggestions are that there's a big growth opportunity. Tea is going well there. Sports drinks has potential, and lighter drinks generally, especially lighter fruit drinks, seem to have a lot of opportunity. And I think one of the other things, coming back to sweeteners, mid-calorie juices, such as Trop 50, which is spreading to a few more geographies, is a new concept which 10 years ago hadn't even been thought of, though it was tried in carbonates and didn't really succeed. Now the debate perhaps is ready to adopt that, but there's also the cost factor and the calorie factor, and juice in Europe and North America is not growing as fast as in other parts of the world, and I think the calorie debate is one of the big questions that we have to answer as an industry. What comes next? Innovation in China. how important is China to this whole picture?
I think hugely important from a market forces perspective. From an innovation perspective, I mean, the honest answer is I'm sort of less sure. I think the Far East as a region for driving innovation is kind of reasonably well established. Particularly Japan as an area where a lot of these new innovations emerge first. But from a general market forces perspective, it's clearly a market that can't be marginalised.
I mean, China is getting some of the biggest growth in waters, in still drinks, in carbonates worldwide. So, and it is gaining share. It'll be interesting to see whether the population policy changes, because there isn't the same population growth, there isn't the same birth rate, and therefore there's an aging population in China. So that will change the character of the Chinese market. But in terms of overall numbers, it's got to be one of the absolute biggest considerations. Of course, value is the other dimension that's important, and that's where North America and Europe win out, but they've become more static. Actually, the next question is about aging and products for aging people. What do you think about that? Can products be targeted at aging people? Are people who are aging going to wear the badge of their age as a badge of honor or a badge of shame, and are they going to hide away their products to preserve their bones and their various functions?
I think it's a fascinating dynamic. I mean, ultimately, we're seeing increasing activity in this area, and the aging population in some markets is well established. I wonder sometimes, even though it's been identified as a key driver, whether it masks, whether focusing on a specific area of functionality, such as aging, or indeed such as skin health or bone health, masks the wider trend of general immunity and prevention within functional drinks, and I think possibly that's the kind of bigger question.
Sort of leads on to the next question, which is no next big thing. Is that what you said, Matt? That you don't think there is a next big thing?
I may have raised it as a discussion point. Yes, Richard.
And what do you think? I mean, do you feel that it was energy drinks the last big thing, and is there anything else coming along like that?
I think I feel it's less about defining the next big thing in category terms and more about how individual areas of a category may increase in prominence. I mean, you raised energy as an example, and perhaps kind of a year, 18 months, 2 years ago, everyone was wondering, will energy shots be the next big thing? We're not necessarily seeing that. We're seeing activity which suggests that growth within that area is more about targeting a new demographic, the older population, rather than it intrinsically being the next big thing with the traditional audience.
I think my view is that functional is the next big thing, but it's going to be a shotgun of lots of individual pellets at individual needs for particular small niche segments of consumers, which may be different in different countries. And energy is, if you like, a very large pellet of that process. But it's quite difficult to tell. There are so many things going on. There are so many sub-segments. We haven't even talked about coconut waters or relaxation drinks. What about some of the emerging ones? Are they just part of lots and lots of small things, or is one of them going to shine through?
Richard, it's a difficult one to answer. I mean, you could say protein, you could say soy, perhaps. I think we're talking different scales, though, in terms of the next big thing.
Okay. Another question about presentations. Yes, just to confirm that we're very happy to send you all a link to the presentation at the end. What should we conclude on? Natural energy was something that you talked about. Is that a contradiction in terms?
Is natural energy a contradiction in terms?
I mean, will consumers accept? I mean, there do seem to be efforts to make energy drinks a bit more natural for some of the energy products, but a lot of them, the consumer demographic seems to like energy for just sort of pure unalloyed energy.
I'm sure you're right. I'm also sure it is very, very market dependent. And depending on where the market is in the kind of the category curve, those more mature markets seem to be encouraging a more natural product. But there will still be a large swathe of demographic who need energy boosts, who need it quickly, and who will be less interested on whether it's caffeine, sugar, taurine, guarana, or what's giving them that boost. But I would say it will come down to individual markets.
Okay, well, it's now coming up to 2:30. We ought to close there. Thanks very, very much for your attendance. Presentation slides will be available to you by web link, which we'll send you after the webinar. Just point out again the invitation to join us in Warsaw on the 16th and 17th of April. Should be an action-packed 2 days and some discount offers on that and reports from us for those who've attended. So thank you for attending, and hope you have a very successful year, and goodbye from both of us.
Goodbye.